Hello, grade 8 students. This is day 28, lesson 11-2, page 556, numbers 11 through 35, the odds. Today's lesson talks about a concept called volume. We've had this in the past, but that was way back in 7th grade. Volume is a way of figuring out how much you can put inside of a shape like a cylinder or a triangular prism or a rectangular prism. Volume is about capacity. How much can an object contain inside of it? And as you may remember from the past, we don't measure volume in feet or inches or yards or square feet or square inches or square yards. We measure volume in cubic feet or cubic inches or cubic yards because we're trying to figure out how many cubes of a certain unit, like inches, feet, or yards, can we shove into that particular shape that we're thinking about. Now, the formula itself starts off being very basic. It's right here. Volume equals capital B times H. Notice it's not a small b, it's a capital B. And the reason why it's a capital B is because they're trying to make the point that a capital B and a small b, when it comes to these geometric measurements, have a different meaning. Here, when we talk about capital B, we're talking about the area of the base. We're not talking about some sort of length. We're talking about the area of a base. So the formula can be read this way. Volume equals the area of the base times the height. Now, this particular formula, after we understand it, can be divided into 3 different categories. And I'm hoping that right behind me you can see those 3 different categories. First of all, if our shape is a cube or a rectangular prism, this V equals B times H turns out to be V equals length times width times height. Length times width replaces the B. Why? Well, the base of this shape is this 5 by 4 inch part down here that our prism is sitting up on. So it's the area of this base times the height. Now, when it comes to this triangular prism, things are a little bit different. In the case of a triangular prism, the bases are here, this triangle, and back here in the back side, this other triangle is the base. The base of this triangular prism is not this rectangle that's 7 by 8. And so notice what happens to the capital B. It does not become length times width. It becomes the formula for the area of a triangle. Capital B, the area of the base, becomes 1/2 times base times height because that's the formula for the area of a triangle times the height. This last height is the distance from one triangle to the opposite triangle. So 8 inches is my distance between this base, this triangle, to the opposite base, this triangle. Now look over here. For a cylinder, the capital B, the area of the base, becomes, see that, pi r squared. Why? Because in this case, the bases of a cylinder are the circles that we see here. And so volume becomes pi r squared, area of the base, times the height of this particular shape. So let's see how this works out. You might have to pull out a calculator for this. Let's start first with this really, I think, the easiest one of them all. If we follow the formula, we end up with volume equals length times width times height, and we get 20 times 5, or we get 100, and our label is 100 cubic inches for that particular one. Pretty easy. Length times width times height, the area of the base times the height gives us our answer. This one, not so bad, just a wee bit harder. 1/2 times what? times the base and height of the triangle, which is the 6 and the 7, times the height, the distance between those two bases, which is 8. 1/2 of 6 is 3. 3 times 7 is 21. 21 times 8 is 168. So our volume is 168 cubic inches in this particular case. 168 cubic inches. Oops, starting to lose it a little bit on the screen there. Hopefully that makes sense. 1/2 times 6 times 7 times 8, 168. With this one right here, it's pi r squared times height. What's our radius? Now be careful on this. Sometimes when they draw these pictures in your book, they won't give you the radius. They'll give you the diameter of the circle instead. Make sure you divide that by 2 first, turn it into a radius, and then use the radius in the formula that we have here. So what do we got? We got volume equals a dead pen. Sorry, time to switch pens, I guess. Volume equals, let's hope this one works, yay, equals what? Pi, 3.14, times the radius squared. The radius squared, 3 squared is 9, right? Times the height, the distance between the two bases, which is 6. So we've got 3.14 times 9 times 6. Let's pull out a calculator, clear it off. And I get 169.56, which I'm going to round to tenths because that's what your directions are going to ask. And I'm going to write it, in this case, as cubic feet because that's what our label dictates. Let's take a look at one more problem over here. It might seem challenging at first, but it's really not that difficult. What if somebody tells you, I've got a rectangular prism with a with a depth of 2 feet, a height of 12 feet, and I don't know the width. Is there a way to figure that out if I've been told that the volume is 120 cubic feet? The answer is yes. Let's think about the formula. Volume equals capital B times H. But we're going to replace that capital B with length times width times height because that's what we learned in that problem over here. Let's see if we can show it there, right? For a rectangular prism, volume equals base times height becomes volume equals length times width times height. And now let's fill in what we know in this problem. We know that the volume is 120. We've been told that. And we've got these two numbers. This is our height. And you know what? I'm gonna call this L instead of W. Let's look for L, because that makes more sense to me. I know I've got a height of 12, right? And I'm going to call this 2 my width, and my length is the unknown number. Let's solve for length. Isn't this really the same thing as L times 24? And can't I solve for L by dividing both sides by 24? And if I do that, I get an L value, 120 divided by 24, of 5. Now, in this case, you'll notice my label is not 5 cubic feet. The volume is measured in cubic feet. But when we're just dealing with a distance like length or width or height, our label is feet, just plain feet. So hopefully this helps you with what you're approaching today. But as usual, if you have any questions, give me a call. So far, nobody's called. Anyway, 517-242-3138. And thank you and have a good day.